Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Legends of Humanity, an international historical storytelling channel, where we bring to life the stories of the great individuals who changed the world. On today's journey, we'll delve into the life of Genghis Khan, the legendary Great Khan of the Mongolian steppe, founder of the largest contiguous empire in human history. From a boy named Temujin, who grew up amidst hunger and betrayal, he overcame every challenge to unite the Mongol tribes, conquer half the world, and leave an indelible mark on the history of Asia and Europe. This is the story of a man born in the wilderness and who died a legend, at once revered, feared, brutal, and great. The boy named Temujin, the Mongolian steppe, where the wind fiercely whips dust and sand, where icy rivers rush through gray rock valleys, witnessed the birth of a child with an unusual destiny. It was in the year 1162. A moment when heaven and earth seemed to tremble, as the baby's mother, Hulin, lay on a rough animal hide mattress in the encampment of the Borjigin tribe. The distant sound of horse hooves mingled with the howls of wolves echoing from the gloomy hills. But above all was the cry of a new life entering the world. The father, the valiant Yasuge, a renowned Borjigin chieftain famous for his hunting prowess and extraordinary strength, bestowed upon his son a meaningful name, Temujin. That name, in ancient Mongolian, meant iron or blacksmith, like a prophecy of an indomitable will and a strength that would forge great things. Temujin grew up in a primal and harsh world. Surrounding the boy were vast steppes like an ocean, where the nomadic tribes' lives were intertwined with horsehooves, bows and arrows, and hunting for survival. By day, the brilliant sun cast its rays upon the lush green grasslands where flocks of sheep, horses, and livestock grazed peacefully. But as night fell, darkness descended, bringing with it a biting cold, and from afar echoed the eerie howls of wolves, a reminder of the ever-present danger. Life here was a long series of battles over territory, unexpected ambushes, and insidious betrayals among rival tribes. In such an environment, every Mongol child was forged into a warrior from a very young age. Learning to ride, shoot a bow, and face death is an inevitable part of destiny. However, Temujin's life took a cruel turn when he was just 9 years old. It was a fateful afternoon when Yasuge, his powerful father, returned from a battle with the Tatar tribe. He had won, capturing a Tatar prisoner named Temujin Uge, but he himself was poisoned by cunning enemies. The poison coursed through his body, and just a few days later, the hero Yasuge passed away forever, leaving his widowed wife and 7 young children stranded and vulnerable on the cold steppe. Yasuge's death was not merely a personal loss but a devastating blow to the fate of the entire family. According to the harsh laws of the steppe, once a chieftain passed away, the tribe would often abandon the vulnerable who could no longer protect themselves. And true to form, betrayal arrived. The remaining chieftains of the Borjigin tribe, under the guidance of greedy and cowardly individuals, ruthlessly abandoned Yasuge's family. They pulled up their tents and left, forsaking Hulin and her children to face hunger, cold, and the hostility of nature and man. From a family of status, Temujin, his mother, and his siblings now lived the lives of outcasts, wandering aimlessly. They had no horses, no livestock, no protection. To survive, Hulin, a strong and resilient woman, taught her children how to forage for food from the wild. They dug for roots, gathered wild berries, trapped field mice, and sometimes, if fortunate, hunted small birds. Those days were a long stretch of constant hunger, of freezing winter nights spent huddled in their tattered tent, listening to the wind howl through the gaps like the cries of death. Temujin, though young, had to learn to shoulder the responsibilities of a patriarch. He and his younger brother Kasar went hunting, set traps, and protected their family from the ever-present dangers. The hunger and cold etched deeply into his mind, but at the same time, they forged his will into iron. During those difficult years, Temujin's character gradually formed. He became more silent, spoke less, his eyes always reflecting thoughtfulness and observation. He never complained or showed weakness, but always sought to confront adversity with an incredible resilience. The pain, the betrayal, and the nomadic life fueled within him a smoldering ambition. It was not merely a desire to survive, but a dream that one day he would end the chaos on the steppe. avenge those who had harmed his family, and unite all tribes under a single banner. The image of his father, Yasuge, who had died unjustly, was always a driving force. Temujin understood that only strength and unity could bring safety and justice to the vulnerable. From an abandoned child, he began to harbor the dream of becoming a great leader, one who could change the destiny of an entire people. Each passing day, whether it was a meal earned or a danger averted, was a valuable lesson, deeply etched into Temujin's soul, preparing him for the arduous and greater paths ahead. He wasn't just surviving, he was growing, and every step on the harsh step was a step closer to his destined fate. Youth of blood and hatred. Temujin's life after the death of his father Yasuge was a long series of cruelties and trials. Amidst the vast steppe, where the law of the strong prevailed, his family was abandoned like dry leaves in a storm. The pain of losing his father, the betrayal by his own tribesmen, and the burden of survival deeply scarred Temujin's young mind. He and his family had to live a nomadic life, clinging to every meal scavenged from the harsh wilderness. Each day was a struggle against hunger, cold, and the constant threat from other tribes. It was during these humiliating years that fate pushed Temujin into another ultimate test. When he was just 13, early one morning as Temujin was tending to his family's small herd of horses, strange figures suddenly appeared from the horizon. They were warriors from the Teachud tribe, Yasuge's sworn enemies, and also the very people who had abandoned his family. Identified by his distinctive hair and stature of Yasuge's lineage, Temujin was captured by the Teachud. He was tightly bound and forced to wear a large, heavy wooden kang, a humiliating punishment for slaves. This kang not only shackled his body but also weighed heavily on his soul, symbolizing the loss of freedom and the shame of a defeated warrior. The days of slavery were the darkest period in Temujin's life. He was treated brutally, humiliated, and forced to witness heartbreaking scenes against which he was powerless. However, instead of succumbing, the fire of his hatred and his will for freedom burned even more intensely. Temujin tirelessly sought an opportunity to escape his enemy's grasp. He carefully observed the guards' routines, memorized the surrounding terrain, and waited for the opportune moment. One night, as darkness enveloped the steppe and the Teachud guards were deep in sleep, Temujin seized his chance. With extraordinary courage and cunning resourcefulness, he managed to loosen the wooden kang and escape. Though fiercely pursued, he persistently fled into the night, crossing icy streams and thorny bushes, until he found a safe hiding place. The successful escape was not just a personal victory but also proof of Temujin's indomitable will. It affirmed that he was not born to be a slave, but to become a leader. After his escape, the first thing Temujin did was to find his family. The reunion with his mother Holan and his siblings was a deeply emotional moment, re-energizing the young boy burdened with pain and hatred. From then on, Temujin began to rebuild his life, no longer just to survive but also to seek justice and a rightful place on the steppe. On this journey, he forged alliances with his first companions, who would become important pillars in his future. Among them was a special friend, a blood brother, Jamuka. Jamuka, a young chieftain of the Jadaran tribe, was a talented and charismatic warrior, carrying the proud blood of nomadic fighters. The two young men, with similar ideals and aspirations, swore an oath of brotherhood according to traditional Mongol rituals. They hunted together, fought together, and shared a dream of a more peaceful steppe. However, as fate would have it, this deep friendship later turned into an irreconcilable enmity, as ambition and diverging paths pushed them into a deadly confrontation. Also during this period, Temujin began to gather his first scattered forces. These were people of similar circumstances, abandoned warriors, small tribes seeking a leader who could guide them through the chaos. Temujin did not recruit them with fame or wealth, but with his own resilience, iron will, and a different vision. He treated everyone with fairness, regardless of lineage or status. Instead of relying on hereditary succession, Temujin valued talent and loyalty. He listened to his soldiers, shared their hardships, and fought alongside them on every battlefield. Gradually, people's hearts began to pledge allegiance to Temujin. From scattered small nomadic groups, a potential force was forming under the leadership of the young Temujin. They fought not just for him, but for a belief in a better future. a future that Temujin promised would end the division and chaos on the steppe. Every small victory, every pledge of loyalty, was a solid brick in the foundation of a great power slowly rising from the ashes of suffering and hatred. What he had experienced in his youth, from the pain of loss, betrayal, to a life of slavery, all tempered Temujin into an extraordinary individual, ready to face any challenge and write a glorious page of history for his people. From wild warrior to master tactician, Temujin's first years as a chieftain were a relentless battle for survival and to assert his position. From a small group of loyal friends and subordinates, his forces gradually strengthened and expanded. He was not only a mighty warrior on the battlefield but also began to display the innate talent of a military commander and a leader. His initial step was to consolidate power and influence among the scattered Mongol tribes. Where chaos and disunity had become the norm, Temujin's first and most crucial conquest was against the Merkits tribe. The Merkits were not only a powerful tribe, but also the enemies who had violently abducted his young wife, Borte. This pain and humiliation drove Temujin to act. He allied with Ong Khan of the Kare tribe, a former friend of his father, and also with Jamuka, his blood brother. With close coordination, this alliance dealt a fatal blow to the Merkits, successfully rescuing Borte and affirming Temujin's growing strength. This victory was not just personal revenge but a resounding declaration of the rise of a new power on the steppe. Next came the confrontation with the Tatars, the tribe that had poisoned his father. This was a fierce and bloody conflict. Driven by deep-seated vengeance, Temujin led his army with the necessary ruthlessness to avenge his family and tribe. The conquest of the Tatars served as a valuable lesson in retribution and power assertion, solidifying Temujin's position as a chieftain not to be underestimated. Afterward, he continued to conquer the Naimans and other tribes, each victory being a significant step towards unifying the steppe. Temujin didn't just win through brute force or numbers. He introduced innovative and revolutionary tactics to nomadic warfare. Before him, tribes often fought haphazardly, lacking organization and discipline. But under Temujin's leadership, everything changed. He implemented iron discipline in his army, transforming wild warriors into an efficient war machine. Orders had to be obeyed absolutely, and desertion or insubordination were severely punished. This created incredible cohesion and effectiveness on the battlefield. Alongside discipline, Temujin also focused on rapid intelligence and flexible organization. He built an effective communication system, using swift cavalry to transmit messages across the steppe, ensuring his army was always aware of the battle situation and moved in unison. His military system was also scientifically organized, with units divided into smaller groups, easily maneuvered and adaptable to any terrain or situation. One of Temujin's most important reforms was the practice of granting titles based on talent rather than bloodline. In traditional nomadic society, status was often determined by family lineage and kinship. However, Temujin broke this rule. He believed that talent and loyalty were the determining factors of a soldier's and a chieftain's worth. Anyone, regardless of their humble origins, if they possessed talent and made contributions, could be promoted and hold important positions in his army and court. This created a healthy competitive environment, encouraging talented individuals to dedicate themselves fully and building absolute loyalty to Temujin. Legendary generals like Subutai, Jebe, and Borshu, who did not come from aristocratic families, rose to prominence thanks to their outstanding abilities. Gradually, Temujin's fame spread across the steppe. From an abandoned child, an escaped slave, he had become an undeniable force. Other tribes began to recognize that Temujin was not just a temporary chieftain, but someone capable of unifying all of Mongolia. His prominence among other chieftains stemmed not only from military victories but also from his foresight, extraordinary organizational skills, and an unwavering, unyielding will. Temujin's name began to be associated with discipline, fairness, though sometimes brutal, and the ability to turn the impossible into possible. He had begun to lay the foundation for a great empire, step by step transforming wild warriors into a mighty army, ready for grander conquests beyond the borders of the Mongolian steppe. The Kurultai, Temujin proclaimed Khagan. Years of relentless campaigning, coupled with exceptional leadership and strategic prowess, transformed Temujin from an abandoned chieftain into the unifying hero of the entire Mongolian steppe. After decades of fragmentation and hostility, the nomadic tribes were now gathered under a single banner. Temujin's banner. He had defeated the most powerful adversaries, from those who had once tormented his family, like the Teochew, to sworn enemies like the Tatars, and even proud nomadic empires like the Naimans. The final confrontation with Jamuka, his blood brother who ultimately became his sworn enemy, also concluded with a resounding victory for Temujin. Now, the sound of Mongol horse hooves was no longer the sound of meaningless tribal skirmishes, but the pulse of a unifying power that was gradually taking shape. In the year 1206, a momentous historical event took place on the vast steppes along the Onon River, the Kurultai, or Great Assembly. This was not merely a gathering of chieftains but a sacred council, where the destiny of the entire Mongol people was decided. In a solemn and heroic atmosphere, thousands of chieftains, generals, and representatives from all Mongol tribes converged. They came to witness and recognize the only person capable of leading them to a great future. Before the assembled representatives of all tribes, Temujin, who had dedicated his life to uniting the steppe, was elected as the supreme Khagan. He was bestowed with the honorary title, Genghis Khan. That name, meaning universal ruler, or oceanic king, was not just a title but a recognition of absolute power and a vision that extended beyond the steppe's boundaries. From that moment, Temujin officially became Genghis Khan, the emperor who founded the mighty Mongol Empire. The proclamation of Khagan was not merely a symbolic event but also the beginning of a revolution in the organization and governance of Mongol society. Genghis Khan understood that to maintain unity and expand power, an empire needed a strong foundation. He set about establishing an administrative, legal, and military system unprecedented in its scope. He promulgated the Great Yasa, the first written law code of the Mongols, which had a profound impact on every aspect of life. The Yasa not only regulated matters of crime, marriage, and commerce but also reinforced military discipline, upheld loyalty, and severely punished betrayal or desertion. This law code emphasized fairness, though in the brutal context of the Mongols at the time, order, and absolute obedience to the Khagan's commands. Militarily, Genghis Khan reorganized the entire army according to a strict decimal system. Units were divided into tens, arban, hundreds, jagan, thousands, mingan, and myriads, tumen. Each unit had its own commander, directly responsible to their superiors and ultimately to the Khagan. This system not only facilitated the easy mobilization and deployment of the army but also completely abolished tribal divisions, replacing them with absolute loyalty to the Khagan and the Mongol Empire. He also established an elite imperial guard, Keshig, recruited from the finest warriors, whose duty was to protect the Khagan and his family. This was an absolutely loyal army, the nucleus of Mongol power. With a unified empire and a well-organized army, Genghis Khan began to look beyond the steppe. Throughout his life, he had witnessed the contempt and invasions of neighboring empires like the Jin, Jurchen, and Western Shah, Tangut, towards the Mongols. He understood that to ensure the long-term safety and prosperity of his people, he could not stop at merely uniting the steppe. Mongolia needed to assert its position on the international stage, and the only way to do that was through strength. Stories of wealth, magnificent cities, and brilliant civilizations to the south and west had long been whispered across the steppe. Genghis Khan, with the vision of a great leader, not only yearned to protect Mongolia but also harbored an even greater ambition, to conquer the entire world. This vow, though not recorded in any specific written document from his own mouth, was clearly manifested through his actions and ideology throughout his life. It was an iron will, a desire to bring Mongol order and rules to all lands, to transform Mongolia into the center of an unprecedentedly vast empire. The desire for conquest was not just for plunder or personal power, but also to create a Pax Mongolica on a grand scale, where trade could flourish, and chaos would cease under his iron hand. From the Kurultai of 1206, Genghis Khan was no longer a mere nomadic chieftain. He had become the Khagan of a mighty people, a great reformer, and a brilliant general with a vision that extended beyond the familiar hills and steppes. The first bricks of one of the greatest empires in human history had been laid. And the thunder of Mongol hooves was now ready to echo across distant lands. Carrying the fire of conquest and change, the world had yet to know of a storm about to break. A storm named Genghis Khan, which would sweep through all civilizations, reshaping the geopolitical map of the entire Eurasian continent, empire by fire and sword. After uniting all the Mongol tribes and being honored as Genghis Khan, his vision was no longer confined by the familiar steppes. Instead, it stretched further, towards the rich and splendid empires to the south and west, lands that had once scorned and encroached upon the Mongols. Genghis Khan understood that to maintain unity and protect his people from potential threats, the only path was expansion. His life now became a series of grand military campaigns, transforming Mongolia from a nomadic people into the masters of an unprecedentedly vast empire. The first conquest, immediately after unification, targeted Western Sha, a Tangut kingdom located in what is now northwestern China. Western Sha, with its fortified cities and organized army, had been a constant threat to the Mongol tribes. Genghis Khan learned many valuable lessons from this war, especially the art of siege warfare. After many fierce sieges and battles, Western Sha was finally forced to submit, becoming a vassal state and paying tribute to Mongolia. This victory not only brought abundant resources but also served as an important stepping stone for Mongolia to advance further into the rich lands of China. Next, Genghis Khan's gaze turned southward, to the Jin dynasty, also known as the Great Jin, a dynasty founded by the Jurchens, which ruled a large part of northern China. Jin was a powerful empire, with a large army, strong fortifications, and advanced military technology. The war with Jin lasted many years, involving fierce and brutal battles that demanded Genghis Khan utilize his military genius to the fullest. He employed groundbreaking tactics such as encirclement, attrition, and deception, combined with the lightning-fast movement of Mongol cavalry. Although Genghis Khan couldn't completely destroy the Jin dynasty in his lifetime, this task was completed by his descendants. He dealt devastating blows, capturing many important cities, including Yanjing, present-day Beijing, the Jin capital. The prestige of the Jin Empire was severely shaken, and the path into interior China was completely open for the Mongols. In parallel with the expansion southward, Genghis Khan also directed his attention westward. Goryeo, Korea, a small but strategically important kingdom, was also forced to submit under Mongol pressure. However, the culmination of Genghis Khan's ruthlessness and destructive power was the campaign to annihilate the Khwarezmian Empire. This was not merely a typical conquest but a vengeful and devastating campaign, stemming from a dramatic incident. Initially, Genghis Khan wanted to establish peaceful and commercial relations with Khwarezmia, a large and prosperous Islamic empire in Central Asia, controlling the Silk Road. He sent an embassy consisting of hundreds of merchants and diplomats to Khwarezmia to open the way for trade. However, Shah Ala ad-Din Muhammad II, the ruler of Khwarezmia, underestimated Genghis Khan's strength and will. In an arrogant and thoughtless act, he ordered the arrest and execution of the Mongol envoys and plundered the merchants' possessions at Otrar. Some even claim that the Shah personally killed one of Genghis Khan's special envoys. News of this insult and brutal act enraged Genghis Khan to the utmost. He considered it not just a personal affront but a blatant challenge to the authority of the entire Mongol Empire. Genghis Khan assembled a colossal army, estimated to be hundreds of thousands strong, and advanced westward in the year 1219. The invasion of Khwarezmia was one of the most devastating military campaigns in history. The Mongol army not only defeated the Khwarezmian forces but also razed numerous large and splendid cities like Samarkand, Bukhara, Urgench, and Herat. Millions perished, and cities that had been brilliant centers of culture and science in the Islamic world were reduced to ruins. This destruction was not only for revenge but also a terrifying warning to the entire world. No one was allowed to challenge Genghis Khan without paying a terrible price. Genghis Khan's reputation, from then on, made the entire world tremble. From distant steppes to Western empires, his name became a terror, associated with invincible armies and ruthless destruction. Kings, nobles, and commoners alike feared the sound of Mongol hooves. He built a vast empire by fire and sword, not only expanding its borders but also establishing a new order across the Eurasian continent. His conquests were not merely military victories but profound historical imprints, reshaping the world map and ushering in a new era of interaction between civilizations. Blood, tears, and darkness. The conquests of Genghis Khan, while bringing unprecedented unity and power to the Mongols, also left a deep scar on human history. Tens of thousands of cities were razed, from bustling trade centers in Central Asia to formidable fortresses in northern China. All became ruins under the Mongol hooves. Fields were burned, libraries destroyed, and countless lives were taken in brutal massacres. The image of Mongol armies with thunderous hooves, whistling arrows, and sharp swords sowed extreme terror across Asia. This brutality was not a random act but a deliberate strategy by Genghis Khan. He believed that instilling fear would make enemies terrified and quickly surrender, minimizing losses for the Mongol army. However, surprisingly, amidst this horrific destruction, a system of law and order was established quickly and effectively. After a land was conquered, Genghis Khan's Yasa law was applied fairly, within the context and perception of Mongols at that time, and strictly. Trade was encouraged, commerce on the Silk Road became safer under Mongol protection, and merchants could travel more freely than ever before. Religious tolerance was also widely practiced. As long as adherents remained loyal to the Khagan, Genghis Khan did not care about the religion of the conquered people, as long as they did not rebel and paid their taxes in full. This strange mixture of brutal violence and rapid establishment of order created the complex image of Genghis Khan, both a destroyer and the architect of a vast empire. However, behind his authority and glorious victories, Genghis Khan also faced deep personal pain and loss. Despite being a world conqueror, he was still a human being with his own emotions and tragedies. The greatest pain in his life was the loss of his children. He lost his biological daughter and a beloved son-in-law in fierce battles. The passing of his daughter, a part of his own flesh and blood, surely left an unhealing wound in the heart of the great Khagan. These losses serve as a reminder that even the most powerful rulers cannot escape personal tragedies. Genghis Khan was a distinctly two-sided figure. He was the founder of the largest empire in history, connecting civilizations from east to west, fostering trade and cultural exchange on an unprecedented scale. He abolished tribal divisions, created a unified Mongol nation, and brought safety, albeit by imposition, to a vast territory. His contributions in organizing the military, establishing laws, and building an efficient administrative system are undeniable. Yet, he was also a harbinger of fear and death. Millions perished, and many cultures were devastated under his hooves. Genghis Khan's wars completely altered the geographical and demographic landscape of many regions, leaving lasting consequences for centuries. He is a symbol of absolute power, but also the embodiment of the boundless brutality of war. Genghis Khan's final years continued to be linked to military campaigns. He tirelessly expanded his borders, consolidated power, and prepared for further conquests. His final war was against Western Shah, the kingdom he had previously conquered but which showed insubordination and failed to comply with tribute demands. This was a decisive campaign, showing that Genghis Khan maintained his iron will and extraordinary command capabilities even in old age. However, in a rare moment of stillness between battles, or perhaps during quiet retreats to his camp, Genghis Khan might have looked back on the path he had traveled. From an abandoned child, a slave, a wandering warrior, he had become the greatest Khagan in history. He changed the destiny of his people, but the price was blood, tears, and enduring fear. His life was an epic of strength and will, but also a tragic lament of the inevitable destruction and loss when a human being harbors the ambition to conquer the entire world. The final days of a legend. Genghis Khan's life was a continuous series of battles, conquests stretching from the Mongolian steppe to the farthest reaches of Asia. Even in his twilight years, the great Khagan tirelessly rode his horse, commanding his armies and consolidating the power of the vast empire he had painstakingly built. In the summer of 1227, while leading his army for the second time to conquer Western Shah, the kingdom that had rebelled against Mongol rule, Genghis Khan suddenly fell gravely ill. Genghis Khan's mysterious death has become one of history's greatest enigmas, woven with various legends and anecdotes. Contemporary and later historical sources offer many theories. Some suggest he fell from his horse during a hunt or battle, sustaining severe injuries that led to his death. This theory is quite popular and fits the lifestyle of a nomadic warrior. Others believe he died of illness, possibly from exhaustion due to continuous campaigning or contracting an infectious disease in the military camp. There are also less substantiated stories claiming he was killed by a captured Western Shah princess, or by an arrow in his final battle. Whatever the exact cause, Genghis Khan's death in August of 1227 ended the life of one of history's greatest conquerors and left a huge void in the empire he had painstakingly created. Before his death, Genghis Khan left behind a unique and calculated will and testament. Most importantly, he clearly designated his successor, his third son, Ogedei Khan. This choice, a decision that went against Mongol tradition where the youngest son, though the youngest son of the chief wife Borte, usually inherited, demonstrated Genghis Khan's strategic vision. He chose the person he believed was most capable of maintaining the empire's unity and continuing its expansion. He also divided the empire among his sons and grandsons into ulus, regions or territories, but all remained under the supreme authority of the Khagan. One of Genghis Khan's most mysterious and famous last wishes was the secrecy surrounding his burial site. He wanted his tomb to remain undisturbed and not become a target for enemies or those who might seek to exploit his name. According to legend, everyone involved in the burial, from those who dug the grave to those who erased all traces, was killed to ensure absolute secrecy. Thousands of horses were purportedly galloped over the burial area to remove any remaining marks, and a vast forbidden zone was established around the supposed location of his tomb. To this day, the exact location of Genghis Khan's tomb remains one of the greatest archaeological mysteries in the world, further adding to the legendary aura of his life. Even though Genghis Khan was gone, his descendants continued his legacy remarkably well. Under the leadership of Ogedei and later successors like Gyaik, Mongke, and especially Kublai Khan, the Mongol Empire continued to expand at an astonishing rate. Mongol armies advanced deep into Europe, conquering Kievan Rus, Poland, and Hungary, spreading terror across the old continent. They also completed the conquest of the Jin dynasty, and later the Southern Song dynasty in China, establishing the Yuan dynasty under Kublai Khan. Other khanates such as the Golden Horde, the Chagatai Khanate, and the Ilkhanate continued to rule vast territories from Central Asia to the Middle East. Within less than a century after Genghis Khan's death, the Mongol Empire became the largest contiguous land empire the world had ever seen. Stretching from Eastern Europe to the Pacific Ocean, it was a powerful testament to the genius and vision of the man who laid its foundation. Though he no longer personally led armies, Genghis Khan's spirit and legacy remained the guiding principles for his descendants' conquests and their management of the empire. They fulfilled his dream, turning his vow to conquer the world into a reality, leaving an indelible mark on maps and in human history. The legacy of the Khagan, Genghis Khan, is gone, but his image, that of a great Khagan, remains indelibly etched in the annals of history and in humanity's consciousness. His life, from an abandoned child to a world conqueror, is an extraordinary story, but the legacy he left behind remains the subject of endless debate. Was he a bloodthirsty tyrant or a great strategic genius who changed the face of the world? For many, especially those peoples who once suffered under the Mongol yoke, Genghis Khan is the embodiment of destruction and brutality. Millions of lives were taken, countless cities razed, and many cultures suffered heavy losses. History records horrific massacres, burnt fortresses, and rivers of blood. From this perspective, he was indeed a tyrant, an inhumane conqueror, sowing terror everywhere. However, for the Mongols and more objective historians, Genghis Khan is a national hero, a great founder who united the Mongol tribes after centuries of division and warfare. He ended the chaos, created a strong nation, and brought peace, albeit an imposed peace, to a vast territory. His military genius is undeniable. He built one of the most disciplined, mobile, and effective armies of his time, employing groundbreaking tactics and possessing extraordinary adaptability. His ability to organize and manage an empire, and to select talented individuals regardless of their background, are also shining points, making him a master administrator. One of Genghis Khan's most important legacies is the Yasa legal system. Although it no longer exists in its original form, the Yasa was the first written law code of the Mongols, deeply influencing social and military life. It defined crimes, severely punished treason and theft, and simultaneously encouraged loyalty, courage, and solidarity. The Yasa also promoted religious tolerance. As long as religions did not contradict the Khagan's laws, this legal code created the necessary order and stability for a vast empire, allowing trade and cultural exchange to flourish. The long-term impact of Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire was immense, far surpassing the mere conquests. Trade along the Silk Road boomed under Mongol rule, as routes were strictly protected and taxes standardized. This fostered an unprecedented exchange of goods, ideas, and technology between East and West. For example, gunpowder from China was spread to Europe, and many crops and spices from Asia reached the West. The Mongols also contributed to the dissemination of culture and knowledge, although many libraries were destroyed during the wars. Later Khagans encouraged translation and scholarly exchange. Scientists, artists, and scholars from various civilizations were highly valued in the Mongol courts, fostering a blending and development of cultures. Indeed, the historian Rashid al-Din of the Ilkhanate, under Mongol patronage, wrote the first world history, recording information about many civilizations. Finally, Genghis Khan reshaped the geopolitical map of the entire Eurasian continent. He not only created the largest contiguous land empire in history but also contributed to the downfall of many old empires and the rise of new ones. The Mongol influence lasted for centuries, leaving its mark on the language, culture, and political structure of many nations. To this day, his image lives on in the minds of the Mongol people as a national father figure, a symbol of strength, will, and unity. Younger generations of Mongols are proud of his legacy, viewing him as the one who brought their nation to the pinnacle of glory. Globally, Genghis Khan remains a controversial but undeniably monumental historical figure. He embodies the complexity of history, where violence and destruction can coexist with creation and progress. The story of his life is not just an epic of war but a profound lesson about power, ambition, and the indelible mark one individual can leave on the destiny of the entire world.